Around 1977, famed Toho company producer Tomoyuki Tanaka managed to catch a screening of George Lucas's Star Wars, a film that would prove to be a game-changer, not only for special effects-driven productions, but filmmaking in general. At the time, Japan's own film industry was in a bit of a slump. Theater closures were rampant in the 1970s, and Toho's own Godzilla series was in hiatus due to declining attendance. However, Toho's disaster film productions, headed by effects director Teruyoshi Nakano, managed to maintain success. The most successful of these being 1973's Submersion of Japan, based on the novel of the same name by Sakio Komatsu. Tanaka asked Komatsu to pen a science fiction story that would act as a sort of Japanese answer to Star Wars. Instead of trying to go for something that would come across as a cash-in, Komatsu wanted to pen something completely different, a type of story that would require a lot more time and money to make. Tanaka agreed to the author's terms, and instead made Jun Fukuda's 1977 science fiction epic The War in Space as the desired preemptive Japanese answer to Star Wars, before its release in the country. Starting in 1977, Komatsu would hold meetings with various Japanese science fiction writers, scientists, and staff at Toho to come up with concepts and bounce off ideas for a science fiction story. Among those in attendance were Haruka Takachiho, creator of Dirty Pair and Crusher Joe, effects director Koichi Kawakita, and designer Kazutaka Miyatake, known for his work on Dirty Pair and Macross. In these meetings, Komatsu would come up with a rough plot and ask his attendees to expand upon his story and image. After struggling for nearly a year, the team came up with a detailed story for Sayonara Jupiter, involving humanity's attempt to solarize the planet of Jupiter in the face of an overpopulated Earth. Komatsu himself handled the task of adapting the novel into a screenplay. The writing of the screenplay proved to be a very difficult task, with many revisions and differences with each rewrite. One of the most notable changes occurred within the second draft, which included an outer space battle similar to those seen in Star Wars. In 1982, Komatsu would release the novel of Sayonara Jupiter, and the film would begin production in 1983. Handling the direction of the project would be Koji Hashimoto in his directorial debut. Hashimoto had previously worked as an assistant director for many of Toho's productions from the past 2 decades, including several of the Godzilla films and Submersion of Japan. To bring Komatsu's grand effects vision to the screen, Koichi Kawakita, who had previously directed the effects for Zero Fighter, was given the role of Sayonara Jupiter's head of special effects. Kawakita's crew, which included a young Shinji Higuchi, were given the task of bringing the extravagant images of the novel to life, something that would prove to be a very daunting task. In order to help realize Komatsu's vision, Toho would acquire the Dextraflex motion control camera, being the first Japanese production to employ this process. This is the same type of camera that was used to create the groundbreaking visual effects seen previously in Star Wars. With the completion of Komatsu's third draft, trouble began to brew when the staff at Toho expressed concerns about the filming of said draft. They claimed that technical difficulties and limitations would make filming this draft impossible. The task of scaling down the third draft and making revisions went to Koji Hashimoto, who was a bit more in tune with the limitations of the Toho effects crew. The final result was a very compressed and simplified version of that third draft, but it was ultimately the only way that the story could be put to film with the limitations given. Sayonara Jupiter's story begins in the year 2125 AD, with humanity now utilizing space travel and outer space colonization. In the hopes of expanding life in the solar system, scientists attempt to solarize Jupiter and turn into a second sun, led by head engineer Eiji Honda. The team fall into conflict with a radical ecological group called the Jupiter Church, who uses sabotage to prevent their progress. Honda discovers that his ex-lover Maria is among the radicals. At the same time, an anomaly occurs with Jupiter, as some Nazca Line-esque markings appear on one of its moons and a strange being, nicknamed the Jupiter Ghost, appears in the planet. Trouble brews as a black hole is discovered to be on a course with the solar system, and that it could threaten all of humanity. So in a race against time, the engineers must try to find a way to use Jupiter as a means of changing its course. For casting, Toho assembled an international cast of talent to portray the characters in Sayonara Jupiter. Tomokazu Miura portrays Eiji Honda, who was at the time best known for his acting roles alongside his wife, singer Momoe Yamaguchi, and he would go on to receive acclaim for his role in Typhoon Club and continues to work to this day. French actress Diane Dongeli portrays Maria Bassart. Diane apparently caused some frustration with the crew due to her haircut. When Toho casted her, they wanted her hair to be a certain length so they could perform various effect shots in zero gravity. However, when she showed up for filming, her hair had been cut much shorter than they had seen her before. Mark Panther portrays the young engineer Carlos. Mark worked in modeling at the time and would go on to become a popular singer and songwriter. Canadian model and actress Rachel Huggett portrays space linguist Millicent Willem. Huggett appeared in many films, such as some of Shikaku's Tora-san films and Shanghai Rhapsody. Rounding out the cast is Masumi Okada as Dr. Mansur, Miyuki Ono, better known for her roles in G.I. Samurai and Ridley Scott's Black Rain, as Jupiter Church member Anita, Paul Tagawa as Jupiter Church leader Peter, and Golden Age Toho actor Akihiko Harada portrays Dr. Ryutaro Inoue in what would end up being his final performance before his death. The late Kentaro Haneda was brought in to provide the score for Sayonara Jupiter. Among Haneda's other known works include animation projects such as Treasure Island, Super Dimension Fortress Macross, and God Mazinger. Haneda uses a combination of orchestral and synthesized music throughout the film. Sakio Komatsu is present at the recordings of the soundtrack, and he praised Haneda for his talent. In addition to Haneda, Juru Sugita and Yuki Matsutoya provide several songs for the soundtrack. Released on March 17, 1984, Sayonara Jupiter received mixed reactions. Praise was levied at Kawakida's effects, which were considered very impressive, but many aspects of the film such as pacing, story, and the acting of the foreign cast received heavy criticism. According to Japanese records of box office by Cinema Jinpyo, the film would earn a total of 300 million yen. While I can't find Sayonara Jupiter's budget records, the 1984 Godzilla made approximately 2.89 billion yen, which roughly translates to nearly 26 million US dollars adjusted, or 3.2 million tickets sold in Japan. Godzilla 1984 was said to have cost $6.25 million at the time, and was considered by Toho to be a reasonable success given its box office. So assuming Sayonara Jupiter, a special effects production that occurred at the same time with around the same amount if not more visual effects shots, was made for around the same cost as Godzilla 1984, it can be inferred that the box office was likely to have been less than what Toho expected. Again, a lot of this is based on inference due to lack of information I could find, so I could be wrong. Apparently, many Japanese audiences at the time thought that the film should have been a more traditional styled action film, something comparable to Star Wars. While I don't think this reflects the problems of the film, I do see where a lot of the mixed opinions come from. The story starts out soundly, with an interesting premise of solarizing Jupiter to create new living conditions further in our solar system, with conflict being introduced in the form of the Jupiter Church. After our protagonist gets back together with his old flame, things get a bit weird. It is after this point that the film becomes something of a tonal mess. The film will present many scenes with totally different tones that don't mesh well together at all. There are times when the film seemingly introduces us to characters, or has us briefly interact with them before they die, and the film just hardly gives us a chance to linger on those moments. There is also a subplot of discovering new life on Jupiter and its moons that ultimately goes nowhere until the very end, and its payoff doesn't feel like it was worth it in the slightest. In fact, it really feels like a wasted opportunity to help the film's narrative and character motivations. Pacing is also a huge issue, as the movie really slows down after about the first 20 minutes, only to immediately pick up its pace for those very immediate character deaths and moments. I think this is why I felt the tone was an issue. The real sad moments of the film come out of nowhere, seemingly with no proper build-up, and as soon as they are over, the movie moves back to what it was doing before. The ending of this film will definitely leave you with something of an empty feeling. I admittedly did not know tonally what I was getting into when I saw this film for the first time, and the end result is just a severe mixture of so many different qualities that do not mesh well together in the final product. The film itself is like a journey, with fever dream-like visuals, tonal shifts that do not fit at all, acting and dialogue ranging from good to awful, while at the same time boasting great music and great effects. I really cannot emphasize this enough. It pains me how much effort Koichi Kawakita and his team put into this movie, when the ultimate final product did not live up to their work. And it all ends in a really depressing fashion that gives you such an empty feeling. In a piece for Sayonara Jupiter, Kenju Shinomura wrote about some of the possible allusions the film has to Komatsu's own personal experiences. According to Komatsu, the true theme of the film is death, with the origin of the film coming from his own experiences in World War II, with the feeling of being ready to die for his country very much being a real thing. Shinomura postulates that the solar system could be seen as a metaphor for a family in Sayonara Jupiter, with Jupiter representing the eldest brother having to sacrifice himself for the greater good. With this new perspective, I can certainly see a lot of what Komatsu is trying to achieve in Sayonara Jupiter. There is this consistent theme of sacrifice and persistence even in the face of near certain failure. I do feel that underneath all the mess, there is a great film within Sayonara Jupiter. A film that can properly bring Komatsu's themes to life, and really execute them in a way that he would want them to be. In its current state, Sayonara Jupiter is a very flawed film. Nevertheless, I do recommend it. Not just for its great qualities, but for all of its awful and depressing ones too. When this film does work, it is really great, and when it doesn't, it is really bad. But it really is an experience worth having at least once. Because for all things Sayonara Jupiter is, forgettable certainly isn't one of them, for better or for worse. Before I end this video, I'd like to thank and acknowledge all the resources that I've been able to use to help me with my research. They really helped a lot, and I'll provide as many links as I can to all these resources.